Hello, everybody. It's 1 minute past the hour. We waited 1 minute longer to make sure that our Facebook live stream is actually online as well. So in case you have friends who hear that you're around and watching something that's super interesting, they cannot register anymore, you can send them to the Facebook live stream, which is happening on the Accelerate 2030 global page. So with that, welcome everybody to this Accelerate 2030 Goes Live with Impact Hub event focused on SDG 2, Zero Hunger. The topic of today is achieving food security in Africa, the role of innovation in smallholder farming. I'm super happy that we are having this special live session and specifically having that in this week because not everybody might know, but this week is Global Goals Week. The week that's really focused on showcasing the action that's achieved towards the Sustainable Development Goals around the globe. So very fitting for the topic today. We as Impact Hub have thought, let's put this out there. If you don't know who Impact Hub is, what we are doing as an organization, let me just give you a tiny intro. We at Impact Hub are a global network focused on building communities for impact at scale. And we have more than 100 communities in more than 55 countries around the globe. And there we have about 16,500 change-driven entrepreneurs on all 5 continents. And with that, we're one of the world's largest communities and accelerators for positive change. And what we do generally is we build ecosystems, and we do that in a way that they drive collaboration as well as entrepreneurial innovation around the Sustainable Development Goals. Hence also the topic today. And we do that both through our locally rooted impact hubs, as well as also partners and allied networks, because collaboration is really key to us. As one of the more than 200 programs that we're running annually, the biggest one we have is called Accelerate 2030. And we're very pleased then to have a session today focused on Accelerate 2030 entrepreneurs. We have a slide here for you that shows where this program is taking place. It's a global multi-stakeholder program with the mission to support entrepreneurs from developing countries to scale their solutions. It was co-initiated in 2016, so we're now entering the 4th cycle, and it was co-developed by Impact Hub, the United Nations Development Program, and supported by the International Trade Center, Pfizer, as well as the Swiss Development Corporation. Through this program, what happens is that top entrepreneurs are selected across the world who are taking action towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are very happy to be joined by a few of them today. On this slide here, you see some key numbers that we brought you. So as I said, it has today been implemented in 3 cycles in 24 developing and emerging economies across Africa, Asia, Latin America, as well as Eastern Europe. And with that, it has reached over 2 million people and more than 1,500 entrepreneurs, and also more than 50 partners globally. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that you have a few of the companies and with that entrepreneurial stats from the last cohort. And what you see basically is that the program has reached impressive growth in terms of impact metrics, beneficiaries, as well as new markets reached. Now, you may wonder, why did we tell you all of this? This is supposed to be a panel discussion, and that's also why I am out for now, and I'll handing it over to Astou, who is your moderator for today, and who will also lead you through the 90 minutes that we're having together. And just before I hand over, a small technical note, because we have people streaming in from a lot of different places around the globe with different internet connections, if everybody who is not going to be a panel speaker today could please kill their video and also not unmute themselves, just to make sure that we have a good technical setup here for everybody and that you can see everybody who's on the panel today. So with that, thank you very much. Have fun. And Astou, handing it over to you. And Astou is our Impact Hub Abidjan co-founder and also the founder of ANA Partners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Flora. Thank you for kicking us on such a great note. So hi, everybody. It's really great to have you all for this session where we will be discussing agriculture. And the reason why we want to be discussing agriculture is because especially for the African continent, it's one of the key sectors that is employing almost, I would say, not everybody, but one of the large proportion of the population. And our role also as Impact Hub is how can we look at the sectors that are important in our communities, and how can we help them develop in a more business oriented way. So with that, today we're going to have a discussion that is going to focus on the productivity and market access sides of agriculture. And for that, we have great hosts and great people that are going to join the discussion, entrepreneurs that have developed solutions, but also people that are in the ecosystem and pushing for innovation and increase in both of those sectors. So today we will have four main people beyond myself that will be intervening in this discussion. We have Mr. Husameldin Elnasri. He's the co-founder of Impact Hub Khartoum, and he's also the managing director of Dabara Consulting, a consulting company that is helping businesses and organizations in East Africa, but also across Africa. We also have, so if you can wave in, my dear panelists, put your video and wave in so people to identify you. We also have Andrew Lala. He's the head of supply chain development at Ignitia AB. Ignitia is a company that is based in Ghana, but working across West Africa. And he'll tell you a little bit more about what they do and how they're intervening, especially when we talk about productivity. Then we have Francis Obiri Korang. He's the CEO of AgroCenter. AgroCenter is also in Ghana, so it's not because I'm Senegalese, by the way. So we're not only promoting Ghanaian enterprises, but all across Africa. But it's because definitely AgroCenter has put up a platform that is very interesting in terms of linking farmers to their markets. And he's going to tell us also a little bit more about that, how it came to fruition, and how it is helping in terms of market linkages. And then we have Issa Sultan. She's from Tanzania. She's a startup advisor at the UN World Food Program. And as I was saying, we really wanted to bring people that are deep hands-on, but also really working in the ecosystem, and she can bring us that perspective. So as Flora was mentioning, the topic today is SDG number 2, Zero Hunger, and how can we really I would say use innovation, use the entrepreneurship mindset to also contribute to increasing productivity and increasing the value add of our agricultural sector in Africa. So just, I will not give you too much number. Mr. Elnasri is the specialist, and he'll go through a presentation where he'll give you a lay of the land when we talk about agriculture in Africa, why it is important, and why it is also important for us to bring innovation to that sector. But maybe to give you some key elements, for instance, when we look at maize in sub-Saharan Africa, what we see is that it has one of the lowest average corn yields in the world. And when in most of African countries, maize is a staple, and so increasing productivity in such value chain, for instance, is really important in terms of achieving also something that is important on our continent, which is food security. So how, by using innovation and having entrepreneurs working to increase productivity, can we help the sector? Similarly, if we talk about other value chain, for instance, cassava, which is on the west side of Africa, one of the main problems that we have is that we have many post-harvest losses that are linked to the fact that access to market is an issue. And so farmers can farm, but then accessing markets and for their produce can be a problem. So those are, I will say, kind of issues that we wanna solve and wanna discuss during this discussion. So with that in mind, if Mr. Elnasri is ready, I'm going to hand over the mic to him. He can present himself quickly, and then we'll jump into his presentation. Does that work?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Astou, for the introduction and for giving me the opportunity to be here today. My name is Husameldin Elnasri, and as introduced, I'm a co-founder of Impact Hub Khartoum, and I'm the managing director of Dabara Consulting. My main focus has been in the past maybe 10 years or so is agribusiness in Africa at different capacities. I will go directly into the presentation. Let me share my screen first. Yeah, do you guys see the screen now? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Cool. So the topic that I will be speaking about today is achieving food security in Africa, and the role of innovation in smallholder farming. But let me first start with, I'm trying to click here, but it doesn't move. Ah, good. So let me first start with why agriculture. To start with, why agriculture is so important for us. So just to share a few figures. Clicking is a bit tricky here for some reason. Ah, good. So 67% of the world population are actually depending on agriculture for their livelihood, and way more than half of the world is actually depending on agriculture for their livelihood, and 39.4% of the GDP of the world is coming from agriculture in different ways. 43% of the world export is actually also coming from agriculture. 25% of the world dry land is used as farming land. So at the world, agriculture is a very important sector and activity for all of us. The world, I think, currently is a bit over 7 billion in population. We will reach 9 billion by 2050, and already the food is not enough for us. So for us to move and to secure our food in the future, the world, we need to scale farming. And to give a bit of an idea about the challenges that are facing the small scale farmers in Africa, I am not able to click again for some reason. Yeah, it's working now. There is a bit of an issue. Yeah, is it showing the screen? Yeah. But this is not the slide. Want to go back? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I will start with the story of Halima. Halima is an average African small scale farmer, and I elected for her to be a female because actually most of the farming workforce, especially in Africa, are women, and women are the backbone of a small scale farming specifically. So Halima is a small scale farmer. She typically owns a small piece of land somewhere in Africa, and mostly she's using rain-fed irrigation system. So she waits for the rainy season every year to grow her small piece of land. So what happened is she will start the season with, and because there is no or very minimal mechanization or agricultural machines available for her, she will manually prepare the land using her own hands, and possibly the help of the family members, and maybe she will be able, friends, and maybe she will be able to rent one or two laborers to help her with her operations. And then she will get into, and because of that, of course, the size of the land she will be able to prepare is really limited to their manual, force. And then there comes the stage where she will have to buy inputs, and then and because of that, she will need finance. Most of the small scale farmers in Africa, they will have very, very limited access to finance. And the go-to sort of like finance route will be for them to go and borrow from a local trader or like a bigger farmer or someone with a bit of means in their community. It's basically social lending where they will go. And the bad news here is most of the time it's a very expensive mode of finance, and the interest can go all the way to 30% sometimes. And the other thing is, with this kind of finance, the lenders will always get paid in kind. So it's sort of like they are kind of the partners in their operation, and they will get paid in kind. And the price that they will set for the crop at that time is, of course, is very low. And but then Halima has very little choice. That's the main and only route of finance. Then she will go and buy inputs, and then the problem with the inputs she is buying is not improved, because improved seeds are really uncommon. So she will have to buy just regular seeds, which is basically the seed that someone grown last year. So it will have genetical issues, the genetical material will be depleted, and then that might also have productivity implications on her crop. And then she rarely uses fertilizers or pesticides, because those are not available close to where she is living or where her farm is. So as a result, this will also impact the productivity, because the soil might have been depleted because of the regular farming every year without fertilizing the land. Again, because she is depending on rain-fed, so she's also vulnerable to weather, to pests, to everything. And then also to sustain her operations, she will continue borrowing money and to meet even her needs, because she's running out of money. So she will go back again to the same guy and borrow money from him. And then by the time she harvested her crop, the lender will come and take his crop, which most of the time, of course, it's the majority of the crop she produced, and she's left with some crop as well. But the problem is she doesn't have a proper storage, and she doesn't have the means to go to the market with her crop, and so she don't have access to good market, she doesn't have access to storage, so she will be forced to sell the rest of her crop to the same lender. And the problem is the price again is not so good. So as a result, she's caught in this very tight ring of poverty, and she will do that again next year and the year after. So I have to click, but then it doesn't work. Good. Okay, next. So what happened is, back one, please. Good. So Halima income, if we look at it, is really, there are a lot of headwinds against it. One of it is poor access to finance, because she doesn't have alternatives for finance. And the other is poor access to technology. By that we mean mechanization, improved inputs, and so on. And then poor access to market as well, because she will only have access to the guy that she borrowed money from. And then there are also gender issues that's underlying and cross-cutting here. Because she's a woman, she also cannot do certain stuff in Africa, and she don't have access to also other resources. And then there is the issue of climate change, because rain could stop or it could flood, as we have been seeing in Africa. And all of these are actually impacting her income. But if we look at all of these problems as businesses, those are all could be business opportunities. If we can find innovative solutions for this. And we have seen that happening a lot in Africa and generally around the world for small scale farmers, people like Halima. And when we, next please. Next slide, please. Good. So if we try to look at the solutions that people can come up with to these problems that we mentioned in the previous slide, there are many approaches to this. One of the approaches is the bottom of the pyramid approach. And in this approach, we look at how can we provide individual solutions for the people like Halima. And to do that, you need to design the solution to be suitable for Halima to address. And the other solution is to aggregate and consolidate. Bring Halima and the likes of Halima in her community into a cooperative and try to find a solution that will help a group of farmers rather than only an individual farmer. So if we take one of the problems that we talked about, let's say finance, examples of the individual solutions will be, for example, individual access to microfinance. Microfinance has been doing a great job in Africa, but the problem with microfinance, it's literally in the name, it's micro. So most of the time it's not enough for them, for example, to buy a small machinery that will help them farm. And it's not enough to take them to the market, for example. It might help them meet some of the operational needs, but it's not enough. Some countries that they also looked at upgrading the social lender, because some of these guys, by the social lender, that's the guy she used to borrow money from in our story. Not all of them are loan sharks. Not all of them are bad people. Some of them are just people trying to make good business. And also their capacity is also limited. So working with these social lenders and try to build a network of good social lenders and provide them with better finance, maybe training on how to help the farmers as well. So that's also a good solution. And it's mainly targeting, again, the individual farmers. We have seen other solutions like linking crowdfunding to farmers, and there are very good examples in Africa, some of them in Nigeria, like Farm Crowdy and Strive Agric. And this is basically linking people who are willing to invest little money to farmers and to smaller scale farmers and help them connect together. So if someone is willing to invest $1 or $2 or $3 or $10, it's not a lot of risk for him. But if we can collect a group of people who are willing to invest this much and then direct this money to small scale farmers, that will really mean a lot to them. Examples in the finance, still addressing the finance problem, is, and this is the aggregate part of it, or consolidate. And this is help these farmers create cooperatives, and these cooperatives will help distribute the resources and share the resources in a way that makes sense. And this could be also finance, so group finance rather than individual finance, because a group of farmers, if they can get the right financial instrument, can be able to afford buying a small agricultural machine, let's say a small tractor or harvester or thresher, for example. But an individual farmer will not be able to afford it. And the same applies, for example, to help the farmers aggregate their produce, their crop, and then they will have more bargaining power, and then the crop will be enough for example, for them to rent a truck and take it to the market, and so on. So these two groups of solutions are both implemented around Africa, but still we are not seeing enough of those. The problem is still there, which means we still need to innovate. If we look at all of these problems, they are all part of a very tight poverty cycle. Halima problems, which is mostly the problems of all small-scale farmers. If we break the cycle of finance, or the part of finance, or if we break the part of technology, and or any productivity, access to market, any of these, we will break this very tight cycle and then give the farmers opportunity to develop themselves better, to develop their production system, and so on. But to do that, we definitely need to find more solutions. And it cannot be the regular solutions that we currently have, relying on bank finance or manufacturing or whatever. So So we still need to find those solutions that will change agriculture forever, being technical or being management solution or market solution or whatever. We need to see what happened for agriculture. We need to see what happened to technology, for example, and what Apple did with the touch screen for mobile phones. We haven't yet seen something like that for agriculture. And it's a shame because agriculture is the future of Africa. And maybe it lies on the hands of Africa now to innovate for agriculture and find solutions for our own problem. So it's time for us to think harder of these problems, look at it as business opportunities rather than problems and sit back there and waiting for it to solve itself. But it's all of these are actually business ideas and business opportunities. It's just need to change the angle for that. So we need to make this breakthrough. I think maybe this is a good platform to call for that. And I think Accelerate 2030 could be the last push that this sector need. And I wish luck for all the agripreneurs in Africa. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation, and best of luck for all of us.
Thank you very much, Issa. This was really insightful, and I think that you planted the decor in a very accurate way in terms of talking about the constraints, and I think that your last slide is really the call to action that we need. And the good thing is that we have on this panel people that have already taken on that challenge and that endeavor of innovating and innovating in agriculture. So what we're going to do now is actually move to that discussion, including those agripreneurs like Andrew and Francis, who have developed business models that can come and serve as a solution to the constraints that you've mentioned. And it would be great, yes, as well to hear your perspective as we go through the discussion in terms of innovation, but also what are other ecosystem elements that we need to put in place in order to scale those innovation. It is something that you mentioned is agriculture is definitely the backbone of Africa, and we have so far seen micro or things happening at the micro level or the local level. So one part of the discussion will be also how can we scale the innovation and make them reachable to the larger number of smallholder farmers. So with that, if our panelists are ready, we'll move into the panel discussion. So as I was mentioning before, we have in this panel discussion 4 great people that can tell us a lot about this. I'm going to introduce quickly each and every one of them, and then we're going to start with the main question. So as I was mentioning, we have Andrew Lala, who's the head of supply chain for development at Ignitia. And so he leads Ignitia's, who is a Swedish company that provides climate and weather information services, where it helps smallholder farmers and supply chain actors adapt to climate change and improve productivity. So Andrew, you can wave back again for the late joiners. Then we have Francis. So Francis Obiri-Korang is the CEO and co-founder of AgroCenter. AgroCenter is an agricultural value chain technology platform that focuses on using innovative technologies to empower smallholder farmers. So he is going to tell us a little bit more about how the idea came and what is AgroCenter doing to help farmers link to market. We have Asia Sultan. She's an innovation consultant for the UN World Food Program in Tanzania. She's currently building the first moonshot innovation launchpad for food security for 2030. So very much in alignment when we talk about Accelerate 2030, and in terms of how can we help in Tanzania, for instance, but also in other geographies, and using innovation hubs to bring innovation to the sector and also help those innovations to scales. So those will be our 3 panelists, and Hussam, who you've heard, will be also joining the panel for the main discussion. And so maybe let me start with Andrew with a question, which is, can you tell us a little bit more about your solution, and really more importantly, what drove you to action? Where did the idea come from, and how do you see that as something that is going to help when we talk about productivity?
Yeah, thanks. So just to piggyback on our keynote speaker, what Ignitia does as a tropical weather forecasting company is we help farmers like Halima turn weather into an asset rather than a liability. And so what the founders of Ignitia discovered, and they were specialists, they were physicists and meteorologists and remote sensing experts, is that something as common as a weather forecast that you would get on your phone that's readily accessible to the world is by and large widely accessible to people, but you take the tropical belt plus minus 20 degrees above below the equator where we operate in West Africa, and those forecasts are largely inaccurate because they were not developed for the tropics. And so recognizing that some fundamental tool that farmers rely on as weather forecasting, that being inaccurate is really limiting these productivity increases. And arguably, it's those smallholder farmers in the tropical belt who need this technology the most to be able to combat climate change, which is bringing more extreme weather patterns, it's shortening growing cycles, it's changing the periodicity of rainfall and the quantity of accumulated rain or drought periods. So that's something that the founders recognized and launched Ignitia to start developing not only an innovation of tropical weather forecasting model, but then also how do we get that into the hands of smallholders so that we can take this complex tropical physics-based model and distill it into actionable information for a farmer where 96% of the cultivated land in sub-Saharan Africa is rain-fed. And so a lot of those decisions, when am I going to plant? When am I going to apply fertilizer? When am I going to apply a pesticide? Or many crops are dried in the sun, where moisture exposure can lead to rejects and quality issues. So how do we distill that complex information to help a farmer make the best decision possible given those weather conditions?
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think that's something that you mentioned and that I would like maybe to hear a little bit more about is how do you put this technology into the hands of farmers? And so one of the questions is how receptive have farmers been when we talk about these technologies, both in terms of trusting the information that is coming from it, but also really understanding how to make use of it in their agricultural process?
Yeah, so I think since starting in 2016, when we joined Accelerate 2030, we were at 350,000 subscribers. Today, we're at 1.3 million across West Africa, most of which coming from Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, just started in Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso. And really, it takes trust building with the farmer to be able to get those numbers. Meaning we have to distill the information using these keyword design where we worked on multiple iterations. Is it visual? Is it voice? Is there a text message? What's the best way to reach as many farmers as possible with this actionable information? And what we found is rainfall as the critical weather parameter is what a farmer is going to test you by. So they're going to look on their phone. They're going to see if you said it's going to rain today, heavy rains morning time, they're going to verify that information. And so through these repeated interactions with farmers, we're able to build that trust because they're able to see, well, wait a second, I heard this weather forecast over the radio, which is miles and miles away, but this, which is specific to my farm's location, is actually more accurate. So you know what, I am going to subscribe and invest in this tool because it helps me increase my yields. And so through these third-party studies, we've been able to see that farmers find our service affordable because we're able to charge very small amounts per day. They understand the message, and we're constantly understanding and tweaking, well, did a farmer understand this rainfall message versus that one? What's going to happen today versus tomorrow? And then ultimately, which is the key for us to understand, is it's changing farmer behavior. It's helping. In the latest study we just did, 94% of farmers who received our rainfall weather forecast on their phone via SMS changed a good agricultural practice. That could be planting, could be spraying, could be weeding, harvesting, drying, any of those practices that lead to the yield increases that we've seen and ultimately the income increases that we've seen.
That's great. I think that the achievement is quite, how do I say that? Impressed when we hear 1.3 million users. That's great, and I think that definitely, if we look at the trend, that's something that is, and as Husam was saying, this is a issue that you have across Africa. So anything that we can use to empower farmers to actually understand the factors that are coming at them and mitigate them is very useful. So we'll get back to you, Andrew, on that. But now I'd like maybe to hear a little bit more from Francis on the other side. So once we've improved productivity using such tools like the one that Ignicia has, on the other end, we have, I would say, issues of linking the produce to the market. And so, Francis, I will let you introduce a little bit your solution, but also tell us more what drove you to action and what are the key achievements that you've already starting to see with AgroCenter.
Sure. All right. Hello. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Astou. So my name is Francis Obrikran. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AgroCenter. So I would like to, first of all, congratulate Andrew and the team at Ignicia. I'm subscribed to your Ignicia weather forecast. So I got a text message this morning that it's going to rain possibly this afternoon, and then it's raining. It just started raining. So if you find my internet to be patchy, because there's some heavy rains going on right now. So congratulations.
It's great
on
to
that.
hear, Francis.
Yes, and then also,
Francis,
I think, yes.
there, because even in Dar es Salaam, when it's raining,
yeah.
The network is not good.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with internet connectivity in Africa mostly. So I will touch people on the story Husam said about Halima. I think there are a lot of Halimas in Africa. If you take the concept of smallholder farmers who are looking for an access to market, there are thousands and even millions of them. What really drove us into action, my co-founder and I, was to be able to break the cycle of what we call exploitative buying from the middlemen who Sam described. So in Ghana, you find out that on an annual basis, smallholder farmers lose more than $300 million in potential income to this exploitative buying. These people go to the farmers, they buy the commodity sometimes 40% below what the market price offer. And year in, year out, farmers are always losing a lot of potential income. On the other hand, also, there are big businesses who are looking to source for local raw materials for production. So mainly we are looking at companies in the FMCG, companies in the brewery sector, those even the production. So mainly AgroCenters came about as a result of where we wanted to use technology to drive impact among the smallholder farmers, where farmers can realize that agriculture can actually be a business and not just a means to an end. Because you find that there are a lot of subsistence farming in Africa where farmer does about 1 to 2 acres. What he does is he sells some, he keeps some at home to eat, and then they make very little income. But we are letting farmers realize that you can actually do agriculture, get access to a structured market, sell at fair market prices, realize good income, even reinvest some in your farm to grow. That's what the concept of AgroCenter came about. We started off in 2017. We're part of Accelerate2030 in 2018. When we started off, I think we had close to 15,000 smallholder farmers. Currently on the platform, we are hitting our biggest milestone of almost about 100,000 smallholder farmers. We've been able to connect them to 5 major institutional buyers. For last year alone, we did trading volumes of close to 15,000 metric tons of commodities where farmers sold to these big institutions. So it's a plus for us. Now the farmers are realizing that they can get fair market prices for their goods. They can get structured markets. They can get access to fair payments through the platform.
Thank you very much, Francis. I think that definitely it's the same reaction in terms of, okay, really bringing something that is actionable and that is directly impacting the income that farmers can make by cutting this middleman and putting the tool for access to market into their hands. And so I'll have a similar question than the one that I had for Andrew in terms of adoption by the farmers and in terms of both reaching the farmers, but also I think that on the other end of your platform, you have buyers.
Yeah.
How is the platform designed to actually serve the need of those two sides? Mm-hmm.
Sure. So when we take the smallholder farmers and you realize that farmers typically do not own smartphones. You find out that the average farmer has what we call the feature phone. So what we've done is to integrate what we call the field agents, who interface directly with the smallholder farmers. So field agents are usually people who have some form of educational background, have some form of training in agriculture, who can then leverage on technology to give services to the smallholder farmers. So they go to the farmer level, they have the smartphone, the tools, the technologies to work with the smallholder farmers. Then also we try as much as possible to dumb down technology. We make use of voice services a lot. So in the case of even giving information to the farmers about the rains, we even transcribe some of the information to local languages that we send to the farmers via voice services. We make use of USSD platforms, we make use of SMS platforms. So at the farmer level, we try very much to make the technology very simple. At the business level, yes, they have sophisticated the platform, they have a web platform. They can actually track orders, place orders. They can even look at traceability, where they are able to even trace to the point where these grains came from. Because you find out that most of these big multinational companies are very big on quality control and then standards and then traceability. So the platform offers them that. The platform also offers logistics, where we've built an Uber-like kind of app that connects mainly big trucks. So at the community level, let's say about if about 500 farmers are able to aggregate commodities and it's ready for shipping, we work with the local transport companies, where we've built a very simple Uber-like app. So we do what we call proximity matching. We match these logistics trucks to the available orders. So they mainly move in there and then they pick it up. And then so we've done also what we call route optimization, where we try to cut down on the total distance traveled by trucks. So we match available trucks to available warehouses, so that the truck driver don't have to travel long distances to deliver to these off-takers. So it's a mix of a whole end-to-end supply chain platform that we've built at AgroCenter.
That's really interesting. And I see Usam nodding and Asia as well. So we'll leave them the floor so to react to some of your comments. But maybe going to Asia, I think that, Asia, it's the French way. I've been thrown by the English people. So Asia, moving to you, I think that the main question that I would have is, so we've seen this innovation coming from Andrew and from Francis, and really looking at what is happening on the local level and how things are happening in our communities to see how the solution can be not only efficient in terms of the platform, but also be adopted by the users. So for an organization and things that you do with WFP, why is it important for you to engage with such innovation and help develop such innovation? Where you seen I would say the necessity, and how are you supporting such innovations?
Sorry, Astou, I'm gonna ask you to just repeat that because your volume was a little bit low for me.
No problem. I was going to ask you. So in your organization, so you're supporting innovation. Why is it important in what you're doing to support such innovation, and what are you doing in the support of those innovations or innovators?
Right. So hi everyone. My name is Issa, innovation consultant at the WFP Innovation Hub in Tanzania. And I think Tanzania at WFP is quite a crucial country office, because it's actually the first WFP country office that actually made innovation as one of its strategic outcomes. So innovation is very important to us. And at the Innovation Hub, what we do is we identify SDG2 related startups, so innovations that aim at reducing the hunger gap. And what we do is we help them pilot their innovations on the field. And the reason why it is very important for us to work with startups and entrepreneurs is, I mean, if some of you are probably aware of the kind of structures and frameworks that, UN organizations have, they don't necessarily cater to the agility and the type of rapid iteration and ways of working that is required in innovation. And so why it is very important for us to work with startups and entrepreneurs is that they actually help us scale our activities. So we do have business as usual, where we have our programs with smallholder farmers. We have nutrition programs with lactating women and their children. But these programs are quite limited, and again, the funding is limited. But we understand that if we support and fund SDG2 startups, then they can help us achieve our impact, but at a scale that our organization doesn't allow us to do, with the kind of organizational constraints and sometimes the financial constraints that we have. So they help us impact or realize impact, but at scale and quite quicker and faster that we can. And, you know, other than providing this pilot support, you know, when we identify SDG2 entrepreneurs in Tanzania and globally who want to experiment and pilot in Tanzania, we take them through boot camps where we help them refine their ideas. We upskill them on innovation methodology like design thinking, lean startup methodology. From there, we give them the funding, but also a project manager. We give them access to an advisor that can help them understand what kind of insights they need to take into account when they go to the field. How do they interpret that? And then how do you translate the information that you got on the field to actually improve your innovation or your solution? We also offer mentorship using our global network and the UN brand to make sure that our startups really have the right channels to grow, but also to have access to users and customers, because that's the only way they can be sustainable. One of the reasons why I was very excited to be joining this panel today is what we're currently doing is, you know, over the last 3 years since we launched the hub, we've been really working on, you know, frontier innovation. How can we solve today's challenges when it comes to smallholder farmers? How can we make sure the most vulnerable populations have access to affordable nutrition? But also learning that Dar es Salaam, where the country office is projected to be a future mega city. And, you know, initially our operations are mainly in the rural regions and in the refugee camps. But if Dar es Salaam is a mega city in 2030, 2050, with the growth of the population, there will be, we will be forced to start also looking at urban food security and how can we help the urban vulnerable to be able to be food secure. And so actually 2 months ago, we launched a project called WFPX, and this was inspired by Google X. And we're looking at moonshot innovation to ensure that we have a food secure Dar es Salaam for 2030. And in this project, we're working with local Tanzanian experts and innovators to help us think through, you know, what kind of Dar es Salaam do we foresee in 2030? What are the problems that do we think we will have then? But the problems are not what is important, but it's more like what kind of a Dar es Salaam do we want to see? You know, so what is our North Star? And then how do we reverse engineer to make sure that we're starting to develop solutions today so that when 2030 comes and we have 10 million people in the city, they're food secure. And so it is quite an interesting time for us because we're also transitioning and rather expanding our vision just beyond, you know, rural smallholder farmers, but also just looking at the food system as a whole and seeing how we can take a step forward and think about food security, yes, in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas. And so, you know, we support SDG2 related startups to solve today's problems. But what has been so exciting for us is that we also want to start preempting this, okay? How do we make sure we have a food secure Dar es Salaam? And how we do that is we give our startups access to funding, access to mentors, access to our global network to help them be able to have access on the field to actually test these experiments and hopefully onboard them with partners that can help them grow and scale as startups. So it's very important for us because we understand we will not be able to achieve the kind of impact that we want. And the only way we can do that is by involving innovation and startups that have the right structure and the agility to push forward and achieve these goals.
Yeah, I think that, Asia, it's really interesting when you say that you recognize the value add, that the agility of startups. I think that that's really, really important, especially when we're talking about reaching and scaling the type of innovation or even the impact that you're mentioning. And maybe Usam, something that you said in your presentation that also came from the discussion and from what Francis was saying is having this two approach between bottom of the pyramid and aggregating. And it seems like it's not or, it's actually the two that are coming together, where you're doing things and reaching many people, but at a bottom of a pyramid model, but at the same time leveraging when you can aggregate and cooperate, both in terms of agriculture, but also actually in terms of the work that is being done to address some of the challenges that we have in the sector. So maybe Usam, or Asia, if you wanted to add something, please go ahead. And
I just wanted to add that I was actually very excited, listening to Francis, listening to Andrew and Husam as well. The kind of challenges that they're trying to tackle actually relate so much to the projects and the startups that we're supporting right now. So we have around 9 startups that we have in our portfolio. One of them is using drone technology to support we call them here in Tanzania extension officers or agriculture officers, who sometimes cannot perhaps visit all the farms in a certain village due to some of the infrastructural challenges and the financial challenges. So they're using drone technology to help give extension officers that don't have access to all the farms, information around the weather, around crop health, to return that back to the farmers. We're also working with one project called M-Pesa, and they're looking at how they can use farmer groups, associations to help them really have access to financing, to savings, and through these savings in this particular app, maybe they could be able to purchase things in bulk at a better price, perhaps start developing a sort of a credit score for the farmers and the farmer groups. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation and very excited to also learn more from the other panelists.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of learning. I'm also passionate about agriculture, and it's great to see the diversity of not only the innovation, but once again how we built into each other's strength to really get to the impact that we want to have. So maybe yes, Usam, going back to you, and so maybe just reflections from what you've heard and your experience that you want to share. And I'll just let the participants know that they can share questions in the chat, and we'll ask them to the panelists. So please feel free to write your questions in the chat, and in the meantime, I will listen to Usam and Andrew react.
Well, I guess I just can't be happier with what I'm hearing from my fellow panelists. I think this is important, and I think we need people to know more about this. I have 2 points. The first point is we need to start working on changing the perception that small-scale farming is not good for business. Actually, it is a very good business, and my fellow panelists actually are making money out of these people. So and of course that also benefiting them. So working on repositioning small-scale farming as potentially good business if you design the right solution for it. Because for decades, people have been ignoring this very important sector. Like if we look at a country like Sudan, where agriculture is more than 35% of our GDP, the small scale farming is 80% of the agriculture farming. And in some other countries like Ethiopia and possibly Kenya, it's even bigger percentage. So, but then when we look at it, we see very little attention is being paid to this sector. And by that, I mean by big businesses. If we talk about big agribusinesses, they say they're trying to do something, but it's not always reaching there. The finance is not reaching there, the technology is not reaching there. So this means this sector, if we flip it, if we flip this problem, is a big opportunity for SMEs and startups if they can design the right solution. So this is a very important point that we need to steadily push startups into moving into this area. Even in Impact Hub Khartoum, most of the startups that will come here, they would want to work in the nice, mobile marketing kind of thingy, they don't want to get their hands dirty. So what I always keep telling them, if you don't want to get your hands dirty, you don't have to, but then you need to find the solution for farmers. You don't have to be a farmer. You can be doing a whole lot of things within the farming sector. And I think marketing this idea also is very important, because the farming sector needs the people who are not actually farmers, who are into logistics, who are into extension, who are into marketing, who are into technology, and so on. But these areas, when we say farming, especially for the younger generation, the picture that will immediately come to their mind is like people working hard with these manual tools in the hot sun and everything. Well, you can be in agriculture and wear a suit and sit in a nice office. No, there's no issue with that.
Just as an addition to that, Hussam, actually, my team and I were posed a very almost impossible question for ourselves last year. Is there a future in agriculture? And this is because we went to the field at one of the regions here in Tanzania. We're researching time poverty for women that are in the agriculture sector. And, talking to different farmers, both male and female, we learned that a lot of the youth are really not engaging in the productivity. So you'd have people late 30s above, if you're lucky, actually doing the production. And then there was quite a tension there, because the elderly would say, you know what, we work really hard to sow and harvest, and then the young people from the next village who have not done anything, they would come in as middlemen, because they understand the situation in the village. If we stay with them, we don't have the right storage facilities. They would give us a really small fee, would have to sell it to them, and they would go sell to the big guys for a higher fee. And we don't have that access to that market. We don't have access to the information, and we don't want to stay with our grains in the house, because eventually, the pests will get to them. And so, the concern there was, if young people are not interested in the actual productivity, what happens to the future of agriculture? And it just got us, it started to, I guess it sparked that conversation of, these people may not be here 30, 40 years from now, but agriculture is still our backbone. So how do we now start making this more attractive? Usually for the young people, especially the millennials, it's instant gratification, in speaking as well myself. And so, but farming is so laborious, especially when there's no mechanization, especially when you have to work hours to get water. I mean, there was a fact that I read last year that women in sub-Saharan Africa spend a total of 1 billion hours a year just fetching water to irrigate, to water their crops. And so for a young person today, thinking about 1 billion hours, they could do so much many other things that could be more productive for them. And a good example that at least I learned from in the African continent, I know the Ghanaian government is doing quite a few things to get young people to be more interested in agriculture. And so I guess my sentiment here is that, how do we start mechanizing agriculture? How do we start making it more attractive as a business and as a venture to go towards, so that we don't lose it? Because if the young people don't want to engage in it, then we have a serious problem. So Hussam, I'm right with you on that one.
Yeah, totally. I think part of the solution is, of course, the rebranding is important. And I think this is something, like organizations like WFB, FAO, IFAD, and all of these organizations working in agriculture should pay more attention to. But I think the bottom line, the real bottom line is, proving that there is money there. If there is money, people will come and work. But they're not seeing the money. It's just like that movie, show me the money. So they don't see the money yet. So this is an area that we really need to work on as a continent, or maybe even at the whole world, is to prove for younger people that you can sustain a good income from agriculture activities. Being, again, this is back to my point, being in the production or being in other areas in the value chain. My other point that I wanted to bring is, the ecosystem for agriculture and agribusiness in Africa is very complex. And private sector in general and SMEs cannot provide all the solutions for it. There are a whole lot of policy related issues related to finance, related to access to technology, related to many other things that private sector cannot deal with it because they don't have the resources to do it. And there are infrastructure issues, of course. No matter how big the company is, they wouldn't build a railway that will connect their production area to the market, for example. And the government should work more on bringing the markets closer to their farmers. Because again, closer market, more money for the farmer. Simple, very simple equation. And we have seen that happening in many countries. One of them is even Ethiopia with the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange. Literally what they did is they brought the market closer to the farmers. And then they also built storage facilities closer to the farmers. So the farmers wouldn't have to transport their produce for long distance, which is a very expensive thing for them to do. And also, it's very easy to reach for these markets and know the prices, for example. So they will have much, much better bargaining power than not knowing the prices and depend on the creditor word for it. So the policy issues are real, and some of it are being addressed. But the problem is, the more I work with African governments, every time they work on these policies, it's in the benefit of the large scale farming and large companies rather than small scale farming and SMEs. And I think there is a whole lot of work that needs to be done in this area. And I think part of this responsibility also will fall in organizations like WFP and the UN, because governments listens to these organizations, and the organizations will have the mean to influence the decision making for these governments on changing policies and doing all of these reforms.
Mm-hmm. Usama, it's something that it's really interesting what you're mentioning. So it's also sad, I think, that Francis had to drop because of connectivity issues, but also seeing how organizations like his, AgroCenta, are trying to bring farmers closer to the market. So you're mentioning definitely there's an element that is more structural and needs to be taken on by governments, but yeah, Francis is back. So it's also great to see that entrepreneurs, where we see that there's a gap or our governments are not necessarily fast enough in tackling some of the constraint thing, entrepreneurs jump into the space and provide solution. And what I really like about all this discussion is, as you say, you can start at a mini scale, but actually the fact that you're responding to a dire need from the market, both farmers and buyers, you can see your platform and your organization grow. So maybe there's one question from the participants. It's Esteban from Madrid who's jumping on something that you mentioned, Usam. You mentioned that before the entry of acquiring efficient machinery or the limitation in terms of finance, and also, as I was mentioning, how can we mechanize agriculture to make it more attractive for the young generations. So he is an operator of mini grids, and he would like to know or have your opinion in terms of the ownership of the means for agro-processing. So when we talk about machineries, mini grids or whatever, what is the ownership models that we can see and that could work in our communities, and what would be the pros and cons of the different ownership models that you've seen of these machineries? So I don't know who would like to intervene. I'll just let you just let me know. Maybe Usam then.
Well, in Africa in general, we are very good at working together, because I think there is more of a culture thing to that. We come together for, for when we are happy, when we are sad, when there is a problem or there is a disaster in the area, we come and work together. However, the cooperative model haven't largely proved to be very good in Africa. And I think part of the problem is related to capacity building. But also, it's because of the stuff that I talked about earlier, because of this whole communal thing. So the problem is when we use the same concept and then we come and create our cooperatives, we bring in the good and the bad together. The problem is that it really, dilute the efficiency of the organization. I mean the cooperative. So the good ones will carry the bad ones, and then the whole thing will go down a little bit. And the same goes back to paying back loans, to managing equipment, managing managing machineries and so on. And the same applies also to the ownership of in his question, mini grids or other agro processing. So if in creating the cooperatives from the beginning, it was designed in a way it will operate more like a company, then we are addressing some of the problems related to capacity, related to all of this. So cooperatives will have to, if they don't have the skills that require to run and manage these assets, if I might say, then they should be able to hire the people who should be able to manage it better. Meanwhile, maybe train them or whatever, but this area is important, immediately addressing the capacity issue and immediately addressing the structure of the cooperatives itself, so we can have this whole system working better.
Definitely, it makes sense. Andrew, Francis, would you want to share a perspective maybe in terms of the ownership models of agricultural machineries or any other assets at your level? Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think I would like to touch on the cooperative model also. So, as Husam rightly mentioned, you find out the cooperative in Africa is largely unstructured. There are a group of people who come together with different traits, different habits, with different opinions, and they are not really structured to be more like a company. So they have different. So, for example, if you look at even one of the biggest risks these financial institutions face in giving loans to small farmers is the risk of default. Most of these farmers collect loans for inputs. Firstly, they find a way to use the money for other things because in Ghana, we say money has wings. You give the money to somebody to buy fertilizers today, and you find out that maybe he wants to pay his child's school fees. He goes ahead to use that money to pay for some school fees, etc. So the cooperative model is largely unstructured. It makes it difficult for some of these financial institutions, even key intervention partners, to really move services to the smaller farmers. But then it always comes down to a change of mindset. It comes down to more of an attitudinal change of mindset, where the cooperatives have to be run more of an entity than how it is. So what we do at Agro Center is mainly once we move to a new community, what we try to do is we set up our cooperatives ourselves, because we have the playbook that we use for the cooperative structure. Even though there are existing cooperatives in that community, we see where there are shortfalls, we try to improve on that. And even when it comes to so a classical example is when it comes to even giving loans to smaller farmers, we make it more of a group lending system. So if a cooperative, or let's say 10 farmers, we give loans to these 10 farmers. If 9 pay and then 1 default, we hold the group accountable. So you find out that it's a way of a check and balancing, where now the cooperatives ensure that they bring in the right people into their fold. They don't just bring anybody who just come and join and then enjoy some of the freebies. So mainly, if that system is in place, they get to see that this is more of a business. And then you also have to find a way to, largely we've seen a lot of government interventions coming, but these government interventions usually are what I call the freebies, because usually elections. They throw out freebies at farmers. So farmers usually can even differentiate between what a freebie is and what is coming from a business who is looking to invest in them. So definitely, once we're able to tell the difference between what the freebies are from the government and then what an institution is bringing in for sustainability, that also works. So mainly from my end, I think once you want to even look at the ownership structure of some of these mechanized things, make it more of a group system thing, hold the group accountable as opposed to an individual. In that case, you find out that the groups automatically will select the best people within the community to work with.
Definitely, that's a great advice in terms of I think that something that is definitely, I think we see across our countries is the communities know best and have trust systems that we can actually play on and work on instead of trying to creating different ones. That's definitely something that we've learned. So maybe I think that there is no more question from the audience. I would like now maybe to move the discussion more in terms of scale, and it's something that you've already introduced in most of your speech, and maybe talking to each and every one of you, and anyone can intervene as they want. It's really, okay, we see this innovation, and Asia was saying, actually startups are a mean to scale impact. But at the same time, when we're working on the ground, we also see a lot of innovation, a lot of startup struggling to get their innovation out of a local, and when I say local, I talk even at the community or city level, but really bringing them at the national level. And then what I'm really impressed with Andrew and Ignacia is actually bringing it to the regional or even continental level. So maybe starting with Andrew, and then I'll let the conversation flow, is what do we see are the key success factors when we talk about scaling innovations? What needs to be either done by the organization or supported within or done within the ecosystem for that scale to happen?
So I think fundamentally, for scale to happen, you need your customers to see the value in the services that you're delivering. There's certainly challenges around technology enablers, around, challenges where for us over SMS, it's multiples times higher to get a message to a farmer in Cote d'Ivoire or Mali, because telecommunication companies aren't as competitive and pricing is much, much higher than it is in Ghana or Nigeria. So there's certainly some constraints to scale when we talk about cost and reaching smallholder farmers. But fundamentally, much like any other business, if you're demonstrating superior value to a farmer, they're going to subscribe, they're going to talk to their neighbors about it, they're going to, through word of mouth, do the marketing for you. And so for us, we kind of look at remaining barriers to scale across three areas. The first is awareness, where most people don't necessarily recognize digital information services as a critical ingredient to productivity, where you can have the best seeds in the world, but if you plant it at the wrong time, it's not going to do you much good. Or if you're looking to access financing and that bank is using an outdated weather index model that assesses your land at a really high risk and you get a massive premium as a result of that, then you've just excluded certain smallholder farmers from insurance, reinsurance, or lending. So there's definitely an awareness generation component around this type of service. The second has to do with aggregation. You've heard a lot from Hussam and Francis about, and Nazia about how fragmented the market is, how supply chains aren't always transparent, who's doing what in the value chain. Sometimes you just have intermediaries moving product from point A to point B and making a buck on the side without actually adding value to the product. So there's definitely an aggregation issue from our perspective. And so when we've driven to our B2C model to reach farmers through these SMS messages, we've gotten around that aggregation issue. You don't have to work with private independent traders and individual cooperatives of varying capacities or agribusinesses if you can reach farmers directly. So Now, as we look to pivot to partner with agribusinesses, to partner with digital solutions, we are coming up against this issue of, well, what's going to work in a cashew value chain with warehousing and agro-processor isn't necessarily the same as a cocoa cooperative or a licensed buying company, and is not the same as a spray, pesticide spray independent consultant who's going farm to farm. So each of those require different business model innovations that we're looking at. So we have to do the work of being flexible, listening to the customer and saying, how can I add value to that cashew processor? How can I add value to that maize cooperative that's selling to a poultry feed mill? That's the kind of thinking that's going to allow us to continue to scale beyond the 1.3 million farmers. And then the last thing when we're thinking about scale is technology enablers. Smartphone penetration really hasn't hit West Africa yet. Not to the same extent as East Africa, Southern, or many of the other areas in the Green Revolution in Southeast Asia. It's not there yet. So while we are still using SMS today, we need to think about building the systems that will allow, once smartphones become adopted, once internet is widely available to farmers, what are those technology enablers and digital platforms that are going to enable farmers to farm more efficiently, be able to weather these climate risks and vulnerabilities that are cropping up, and enable them to work together more, to aggregate produce as a smallholder farmer and reach more attractive and profitable markets at the price point and at the quality that those markets want. So I think part of that too is digital payments, but I could go on and on about some of these opportunities and challenges to scale. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so I think that definitely. So anybody you know Andrew now. So please feel free to reach out to him to engage in the broader discussion. But maybe Francis, I would like to also hear a little bit of your perspective, reflecting on what Andrew is sharing. Yes, as an entrepreneur and someone who's scaling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I share a very similar sentiment with Andrew when it comes to scale. Mostly, I'm very cautious talking about scale in agricultural value chain, because it is not like your typical fintechs where you launch an app, next 2 days it blows up and you have 10 million subscribers. Within the agricultural value chain, you have to build everything from ground up. I call it the ground up approach, because you set out to do a simple, let's say even a simple messaging platform, you end up building a whole platform that solves about 6 problems just to get your messaging across. Andrew was talking about tariff differential in tariff charges across the country. That's a big problem. If you take what we do, for example, we gave the agents opportunity to use the app we built. They went on the field. In some communities, we found out that there was no internet connection. Apps require internet to work. So we had to quickly come back to the drawing board to build a second version of the app that can actually work offline, can collect data offline, and then synchronize when you connect to internet. These are services that you have to build additional layer of services upon services before you can get a very simple thing to work. So for scale within the agricultural value chain, I think it should be very systematic because the agricultural value chain has been neglected for a very long time. Even when you look at even penetration of even the internet, it is very low. Penetration of smartphone is very low. So you have to be patient. You have to build a lot yourself, because you find out that most of these things do not even exist to make a simple platform like yours work, to make a simple technology like yours work. And if you want to rely on the government, that might take a lot of time. So you have to be very deliberate about scale in Africa. So I mentioned that it's more of the value. I look at more of the impact than you saying, okay, I'm operational in about 6 or 10 regions or even 10 countries. If you're able to do even about just 100,000 farmers within one country over 5 years, trust me, you are very successful, especially within this agricultural space, because it is very tough to launch and then operate. I've seen a lot of AgTech startups come and go. Most come and then they just leave, because even the young ones don't want to come into the space because it is a very tough terrain. It has a lot of opportunities, but then the challenges can outmaneuver you and then swallow you. So you need to take your time to look at more of the impact of what you can achieve, and then hasten slowly when it comes to the scale. That is more, from my point, I think that is more, that is what we align ourselves with.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I think that, as you say, it's a tough terrain. And maybe Usam and Asia, as people that are seeing at the ecosystem on a broader, on a macro level, what do you think would be necessary, or what have you seen coming into the space that can help in this scale discussion?
Let me go first, Asia. I think a lot of people are talking about this right now, which is a very positive thing. And we are seeing a lot of incubation programs being launched all over Africa that is specifically targeting agribusiness. But here is the thing. Let me just be honest about this. You can do a whole lot of capacity building to SMEs and startups and all, but if the money is not there by the end of the day, like investments that will go into these businesses and support them, not only in the initial phase as a startup, but also help accelerate them, then we wouldn't see the real change happening, you know. And we have seen that happening a lot. Very brilliant ideas, very, you know, like promising and all, but then they reach the point where they need to move to the next phase or die. So they didn't get the push that's needed, and by push I need investment or whatever funds that they can get, but also a little bit of capacity building, you know, because to move from being a startup to being a middle or medium company, then there are certain changes in the structure, in the capacity, and in everything that will prepare you for this phase, and that's not happening. So we are leaving it for the really brave and good ones, survival for the fittest, you know, like just like Andrews and Francis. But to have real change, we need more of Andrews, more of Francis all over the continent, so we can see things moving forward. And this will not happen unless we address the issue of finance and investment. And big part of why people are not investing into this is because of the risk of agriculture in general, and then the risk of this whole startup SME thing. And this is not something that we should expect only, again, private investment to do, because, you know, they wouldn't gamble with that. So we need to think again innovatively about how can we specifically address the risk of investors to get into this field. And then we will start seeing more changes in the sector as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hussam, you know, quite a lot, because I remember having a conversation last year with one of the SDGs 2 startups here in Dar es Salaam, and they said, you know what, actually as a startup at this point, I don't want you to give me $5,000, $10,000, but I would like for you to give me access to 5,000, 10,000 users. And so, you know, that comment really started a conversation amongst ourselves in our unit as to how we can actually help the startup scale. Because again, you have a lot of brilliant minds that have very great ideas. They managed to make a minimum viable prototype that they can test on the field. And maybe even a final product. But if they don't have that backing as a startup, where you don't have perhaps the most excellent team, you don't have the experience that some of the big private players in the market do have, you just never get to that point, because even for investors to invest in you, they want to see some traction. And so what we have been exploring actually is moving away from innovation challenges, because they are there, but looking at the outcome of these innovation challenges and how do we track SDG2 entrepreneurs that have potential, and seeing how we can integrate them into our programs. And so if there is a startup that has a good, you know, storage facility innovation that is sustainable, how do we integrate them in our own programs, so that automatically, if they're in our space, they have access to 400,000 beneficiaries. And so in that way, we are helping them scale and giving them credibility to attract even more investors beyond WFP. And so you know, and the topic of scale is really quite different depending on the ecosystem. You know, the Tanzanian ecosystem is quite young. It's very dynamic, but it's very young, and we have a lot of startups just between the early stage and growth, and we're trying to understand what is that gap that is a blocker to our startups getting to that scale level and being able to advance more. And as WFP, we're saying, okay, we can support a 1 year, 2 year pilot, but what happens to them after that? You know, when they're standing alone. So how do we integrate them in our programs so that they have access to many more users, that makes them more credible, and then also even after they. And also using our brand name to help them accelerate and scale even more. So, you know, it's also a learning curve for us, but we do recognize some of these gaps, and we're trying very hard to understand how we can help them scale. And this is just something that we're trying between 2020 and 2021 to see how we can support in that.
Thank you very much, Asia. I think that's something that you said is really important, which is how using such platforms, and I think that what also Impact Hub is doing with Accelerate 2030 is providing entrepreneurs with platforms that can help them reach users, reach funders, reach partners, and also really broaden their horizon so that they can not only think about a scale, but also start actionable steps toward that scale. So I would maybe 30-second last word. I don't want to shut you out with completely if you had something very important to share with everybody. So please, maybe 30-second each if you want to share something, and then I'll pass the floor to Flora. But before you share, thank you very much. This has been such a great and insightful discussion. A lot of many other subjects that we would definitely want to explore more. And so well, I think that it's also a great platform just to know what everybody's doing, how everybody's thinking about the sector, and then everybody can engage like on a bilateral way. Please do. Connections are made for that. So yeah, anybody who wants to just give some final remarks, and then Flora will wrap us up. Oh, you've talked too much. You're done. Andrew, Usam, Asia, Francis, everybody's done.
No, I have a final remark. I think from my part, I would just love to say, I mean, I spoke earlier about WFPX, which is really the very first moonshot innovation project in the humanitarian space. We are building this ship as we fly. And so we really want a lot of engagement from stakeholders, from the ecosystem, whether you are an expert within the food system in Africa, whether you're an innovator, whether you're a futurist. Please look out for the hashtag WFPX, because yeah, we will be engaging and would really love to learn from everybody that I guess comes from the different touch points when it comes to food systems, food security, cities, you know, urban planners, innovation. And what is important for us for this project is not only do we hope to have a moonshot idea that we can develop further next year, but also we want to create a blueprint of sorts that can be replicable when it comes to moonshot innovation in the humanitarian space. When we talk about moonshot innovation, we talk about the Googles that have a lot of money. But in the humanitarian space, we do have the constraints, financial constraints, but also structural constraints. So we're trying to understand or create what that looks like for us in the humanitarian space and for social impact enterprises. So please do stay engaged. I will share more information with our Impact Hub colleagues. But yeah, I would really love to hear a lot from you guys over the next few months. And we will be sending out different probes and questions to see how you can all help us realize this moonshot program. So I just want to say that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Gentlemen?
No, I just want to, first of all, thank the Accelerate 2030 team and my fellow panelists. I've learned a lot. Look, none of us are going to be able to work with smallholder farmers like Halima on our own. So I think these types of forums that allow us to explore different approaches are much needed. And we're open to partnerships. We can't do it alone. So feel free to get in contact with us at Ignitia, and we'll see what we can do together.
Just to say a few words, I think this is probably one of the best panels I've ever been into recently. And what I liked about this is there are people, like Andrew and Francis, who actually were persistent enough to be able to succeed in a very, very hostile business environment that they are working on. And I think this is, their experiences, I think something that we can all learn from. And I'm very honored to be have spoken with you today, and also with Asia, and learn a little bit about what WFP in Tanzania is doing. Can you guys tell the WFP guys in Sudan about this program as well? We would love to have that here. So thank you.
I will
thank
be
you
in touch with you, Hussam.
Thank you, Astou. Yes, please do it. And please reach out for me if you have any questions specifically about agriculture and strategy. I will be very happy to collaborate. And the same goes to you, Andrew.
Thank you.
And Francis. And thank you, Astou, as well.
Francis, last word from you. With your
yes, so definitely. So I think definitely this is a very good panel, very diverse feedback, very results oriented. All I want to say is I think we need a lot of young people within the agricultural space. We can't wait for the next 5 to 10 years. Definitely has a lot of problems, but then trust me, the opportunities are more than the challenges. So you might get your hands dirty, your boots dirty, but it's worth it to try to create impact in the life of Halima, because you find out that a lot of these farmers are very poor, and these are the people who feed the whole continent. How does somebody who feed the whole continent become very poor? So we need a lot of resources, we need a lot of tools. Much as I say, in this space, there's no competition, it's all collaboration. We don't have competitors because the problems, we cannot do it alone. We need 1,000 Ignitia, we need 1,000 agro centers to be able to drive the next agenda in the agricultural space. So I think that is my submission.
Thanks a lot to all of you. Flora, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think I speak for all participants who have listened either here or watched this on Facebook, that it was a truly inspiring panel. So if you leave as inspired, or even half inspired of how inspired I am right now, I would love to take action. So if you feel the same way, and if also touching on Astou's words, summarizing from the panel the point around providing platforms for entrepreneurs to grow and to connect to one another, if you want to do that in a light touch way, we have during the pandemic realized a global membership that is for free, which you can join in order to stay connected to fellow entrepreneurs and to any kind of change makers around the globe, and specifically in your region. I'm adding the link here in the chat. And if you are already working on an idea or have an idea that you are realizing and that you would want to scale, then join us in the next edition of Accelerate 2030, because that is a program that's exactly such a platform where such collaborations can grow. So with that, thank you very, very much to all panelists, to all impact hubs in the African region who have co-created this wonderful panel, and to the Accelerate 2030 team. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and make sure to tune in again when we go live.
Exactly.
Thank you, Laura.
Bye-bye. And definitely join us on all our platforms, and join us for the next edition of Accelerate 2030. And if you know great entrepreneurs in agriculture, but also other sectors, please refer them. We'll be happy to get in touch and support them. So thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone.
One last thing, Accelerate. If we could also share my email, I think it would also be very interesting if we can talk about the kind of support that we have for SDG2 entrepreneurs. Please do let's all get involved. We work mostly with the growth stage and not so much early stage, but yeah, let's keep that conversation open between the two of us and see how we can support Zero Hunger Accelerators.
Definitely. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
A
so
shout
much.
out to Anita. Thanks a lot for making that happen, and to the global team for the support and all the Philo Impact Hubs. It's great. Let's do this again.
Thank you. Great. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.